is our last speaker of the session, David Reibstein. He's the he's the world expert in quantitative marketing and marketing strategy. David is the William Woodside Professor and the Professor of Marketing at the Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania. David is among many, many honors, including numerous teaching and research awards. He is the previous chairman of American Marketing Association and the former executive director of MSI. And also, one thing which catch my eyes from his long CV, his very, very decorated CVs, is that he's actually the host of his very own radio talk show on Sirius XM radio channel 111. So mark down the channel. So I thought that's perfect because he's such a renowned professor and full of insight, but also at the same time he's very humble and generous and very humorous person. So in our profession, which is very rare, some people are very smart, but not necessarily nice. Okay, but some people are very funny, but not necessarily insightful. But he has everything. So without further ado, please join me welcoming David Reibstein.
Thank you very much. I've never been introduced as being humble. That's sort of it. I'm really surprised by that. So that was good. For those of you in industry here, you have no idea how difficult all of our faculty presentations are because we have to present in 20 minutes and we've been conditioned to speak in an hour and 20 minutes. So it's a very difficult task for us to do. I'm going to spend my time talking about a project that I sort of came into, which is very different than anything else that I've ever done. And actually, you mentioned I was the executive director at the Marketing Science Institute. And when I was the executive director at the Marketing Science Institute, what rose to the very top of the list of priorities there was a topic called marketing metrics. And it sort of shifted some of my research at that time. And I started working on marketing metrics and trying to link it to financial consequences. And I teach a course called Linking Marketing Metrics to Financial Consequences. I'm co-chair of a conference this summer that's Marketing Meets Wall Street. And actually, the radio show, thank you for mentioning that you are in marketing. I do appreciate it. Channel 111, Mondays, 4 p.m. The show is called Measured Thoughts with Dave Reibstein, and I tend to interview senior executives in marketing. And I ask them, so you're spending so much money, how do you measure what the impact of that is on the financials of the firm? Really interesting stuff. One of the things that we obviously pay attention to, and one of the metrics that's of importance, is a brand. And trying to think about the value of that brand. And so I've been spending a lot of time thinking about brand and brand value and how a firm gets value from that. And that sort of is part of what led me to this particular project. So let me jump in and tell you a little bit about it. We all know about brands. This is a group that understands, the notion of a brand and what's involved with that and the associations that we have. You can put various different brands from all around the world, and people know what it is that a brand is. Why do companies invest in brands? It's not just ego. They invest in brands because it pays. And how does it pay? It takes that demand curve and it shifts it outward. And as it shifts it outward, it allows us to either charge a higher price or get more volume. And when we think about the value of a brand, often what it is that we're talking about is those two areas. And most firms take it either in price or in volume, but most likely take it in some combination of those two. It is the case that brands have associations in people's minds. I wonder, and I started thinking about, does a brand of a country have an association in people's minds? When people think of a country, is there an association, and then is there any value that a company happens to get from it? And so I started saying, where does a country get its value in its reputation and in its brand? And I was curious of whether or not the brand of a nation affects tourism, foreign direct investment, and foreign trade. And could I find any relationship between the image and brand of a country in the economy of that country. And that happens through these three primary components that are there. And I started thinking about, do we see brands of geographies, not just brands of countries? And I was all prepared to play these different campaigns that are there. We all know the I Love New York campaign, the Virginia one, Virginia's for Lovers. The Jamaica one I absolutely love. You know the theme song for the Jamaican one? Do you remember it? Yeah, we could all do that. Can any of you remember? Can you sing that? You know, come back to Jamaica. Yeah, don't ask me to sing it. You really don't. You don't want that, but it really, really great. And trying to sort of get people, actually the Jamaica one, they had a crime problem. They really tried cleaning up the crime there, and then they wanted to encourage people to come back to Jamaica. And it was all towards tourism, and that's what it is that they were directing towards. But geographies have brands, just in the same sense that products have brands. And the question is, how does that affect one? Now, I started looking at this, and then I said, well, there's a bunch of research that's out there about nation brands. So I'm not the first one to be doing this. So probably the most famous one is by Anholt, and he's been out there. And I'm not going to do a whole lit review of the different ones that are out there. This one happens to measure specifically power and quality, and that's what it is about. He's got his list of the countries that are most powerful and highest quality. So he's got his list out there. There is the Future Brand Nation Index. It's out there trying to measure various different things, and here's their countries that they've got that are there. There's the World Happiness Report that has come out, and so there's various different ones that are out there, and here's sort of where their results are. And there's been some academic literature, a lot of it that actually has focused on country of origin and its impact on the brand of a product, and trying to look at it that way. I know that if you're looking at a pair of shoes and you see there's a pair of shoes that looks identical to this other pair of shoes, but this pair happens to come from Italy and another pair happens to come from Bulgaria, you're much more likely to buy the shoes that come from Italy, and you're much more willing to pay a higher price for the shoes that come from Italy. And so we see that. We could say the same when it comes to wine, that you're more likely to buy wine and prefer wine that comes from France than versus Paraguay. And if we would look at cars that come from Germany, well, we know they must be well manufactured and well engineered. I have a student who started this company, Harry's Razors. Any of you know Harry's Razors? Okay, wow, large number of you. He's been very effective. He's got the weirdest ads. The ad is German engineered. I don't know how much engineering there is in a razor. Actually, I don't know much about razors, but I don't know how much engineering there is in a razor, but their ad is German engineered. Well, I got to go buy one of those. Well, the implication is if it's German engineered, it must be good. It must be high quality, and that's why it is that they do that communication as German engineered. Locations can also have a negative implication. So Haagen-Dazs ice cream is from where?
Not Amsterdam. Not the Netherlands.
So it's not from the Netherlands. They have their name is Haagen-Dazs ice cream. You can see the upsala that is above the A when you see Haagen-Dazs ice cream. Well, it so happens Haagen-Dazs ice cream started in the Bronx and is located in New Jersey. And they don't want to say New Jersey ice cream. They want to make you think it's a Scandinavian ice cream. And that it must be wholesome and dairy rich, as there's that country of origin image that happens to be there. I see you shaking your head, yes, we have Lenovo. Lenovo's not the name of the company originally. They changed their name, and they don't want to have a Chinese name. You want to buy a computer? We want you to trust it. We're going to have your valuable data that's there. They came up with a name like Lenovo. When I hear the name Lenovo, I think it must be Italian. It's Lenovo. You know, it's like, what is this? But it sort of is interesting, trying to get you to think it's not Chinese is part of what it is that they're doing. And we see countries doing their big campaigns. So I'm working very closely with the country of India, directly with the Prime Minister there, and working on Brand India. And they've got a campaign, Make in India. I think that's a really interesting campaign, because it's not saying made in India. It's saying make in India. Their target is not consumers. Their target are manufacturers. We want you to make it in India. And we've got all the features, and we're trying to compete with China, and that's what it is that we're doing. And it's interesting, that's their campaign. It is not to get consumers to buy products from it. So actually, what happened was I gave a presentation at Young and Rubicam. At that presentation, and I talked about the notion of thinking about the brand of a nation and how it might affect the economy of the nation. And what's different about my nation branding study from those others that I showed you is that I'm going to try and relate it to the economic consequences, not just a beauty contest, but what's the economic implications of any of this. Gave the presentation at Young and Rubicam, and one of the people that came and sat through that was a guy by the name of Ido Aharoni. Ido Aharoni was the consulate general from Israel to the United States, and he's now actually on the faculty at NYU. He had breakfast the next day with Mort Zuckerman, who is the chairman of US News. And I was sort of saying, I want to do this study, but I can't afford to do this study. And I ended up getting Young and Rubicam and US News to fund the study that I ended up doing. And US News now has a special issue on just the best nations. And it's exclusively dedicated to the research that I had done. And if you want, go to US News and best countries, and you'll see all of my data. So I've put all of the data up. Ended up doing this study, did it last year, and actually got a chance to present that at Davos at the World Economic Forum, which was really fun to do. And then I did it again this year at a press conference in DC. I was invited to go back and do it at Davos, but I delayed the data collection this year to do it after the US election, because I wanted to see what the implications were going to be from the US election on it. So you didn't want to say anything about Trump. The data will speak about Trump. I don't have to, and we'll get a chance to look at that. So in the first survey, I did 15,000 respondents. The most recent survey, I did 21,000 respondents from around the world, and actually measured across 65 attributes using the BAV sort of protocol with them tailored a little bit more to the countries. Took the 65 attributes, factor analyzed them, ended up forming subgroups. These are general categories that we have right here. These are composite variables, and over here are the standardized correlations that they have with GDP. Took those scores that every country had, weighted it by these weights that we have, and then was able to rank countries overall in terms of their national brand. And that's what it is that we get to see. So here are the results. And so these are the top 5. You can see, and I did it for 60 countries year 1. Year 2, in the selection of the 60 countries, I'm not going to get into, it's on the site. Year 2, you had to qualify either in year 1 or year 2, and you were included in this particular data that we end up having. What was interesting is I presented it, and I heard the presentation yesterday, and we heard about Jimmy Kimmel. The day I presented it in Davos, this came on.
Many important topics to cover tonight, not the least of which is something called the Best Countries Report. This is a ranking of all the top countries in the world. It's determined by a group that includes the Wharton School of Business and U.S. News and World Report. They released their findings at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland today, and according to them, the best country in the world is Anyone? Germany. Although at first Steve Harvey said Colombia and everyone got it. Well, Germany is the best country in the world. Germany came in first. Canada was second. The United Kingdom ranked third, and we checked in after that. The United States finished fourth. I'll tell you what, when Donald Trump finds out about this, he is going to sell a lot more hats, that's for sure. We get beat by Germany. We have movie stars. We have Disneyland. We have Costco. They have this. This is, I think, this is, that's their leader. His name is Hosen. Anyway, congratulations to them, I guess. Not that it's any consolation, but North Korea did not make the list of the world's best countries.
I'm going to skip past him. By the way, we count our strides in academia based on our citation list and how many times we're cited. I got cited by Jimmy Kimmel. Come on, I mean, that feels pretty good. So anyhow, I've got these sub-rankings and everything. If I had more time, I'd have you guess which countries from 2016 went up or down in 2017. And it's sort of, it's fun. Before I got the data, I was sort of speculating what it is that would happen. And I fully anticipated changes that were going on. So what country do you think would change? Canada. It went up. And what? So U.S. down, U.S. goes down. Actually, it sort of is interesting. I forecasted that Germany would go down. Why? Volkswagen. The Volkswagen scandal cost Volkswagen about $72 billion. But I think it cost the country more. And I think it ended up having an impact on the image of Germany. And that's what is there. Plus, Merkel's had her issues, and what's also happened is that they've got 1 million refugees and trying to deal with that. I forecasted that the UK was going to go down with Brexit. I thought the US was going to go down. So here's what it is that ended up happening. And this is the 2017 rankings that ended up resulting. I gave a presentation of this. I released it in DC in front of 40 ambassadors from around the world. And I was asked the question of what change surprised me the most. And my answer was the UK not changing. And it sort of is interesting. I anticipated they were going to fall significantly, and it turns out they didn't fall at all. Their economy hasn't been affected by Brexit. People are still split on it. And when I talk to people, half the people say up, half the people say down. Really, really fascinating to see with this. Here are sort of the sub-rankings. I'm just going to run through, and you can see each of those. I'll come back and show those again real quickly. Here's the 2017 data. Switzerland, #1. Canada stayed the same that we have there. We got to see the rest of the list that was up there already. And just for face validity, I thought I'd put up here, if you looked at it, what countries are ranked highest in terms of adventure? Well, we see Brazil, Italy, Spain, Thailand, Greece. And what I know is that your ranking, your perception in terms of adventure has an impact on tourism. Actually, one of the things that's interesting, a country that I did forecast was going to go down, I can see in the data last year versus this year the perceived safety of France. France has fallen in terms of perceived safety. Tourism is down 21%. So we can start seeing the impact of these things on directly what it is that's ends up happening through it. So I could run through each of these. Actually, this one really big, citizenship has a large correlation, standardized correlation with GDP. Norway, Sweden, the Scandinavian countries really high up there in terms of what their overall ranking is. Again, all of this data is available online. You'll be able to look at it. Totally different thing that I've never done work like this before. And suddenly what it is that I find is, I'm being contacted by governments and saying we're concerned about our brands. So next week, I'm heading to Indonesia, where I'll be meeting with the president of Indonesia and working on Brand Indonesia. I'm scheduling a trip to Saudi Arabia to meet with the Crown Prince and talk about Brand Saudi Arabia. I was invited and had dinner at the president's house in Israel. And it sort of is, countries get it. I wrote an article, I'm in the process of writing an article that says, wrong way, Trump. Because you saw the United States go from number 4 to number 7. I've got a lot of other data I want to show you. Don't have time to do that. Let me just ask a question. On my survey I sent out, I asked people, if you could have voted in the US election, who would you have voted for? Anybody have a good guess at what percent said Trump globally? Yeah. Turns out it was 25%. Hillary got 75%. Okay, two real simple questions to see if you're still awake. It's a Saturday morning. What country voted was most favorable towards Trump? Russia is the correct answer. That was really easy. And the answer is 84% of the people that responded on my survey, 84% of them said Trump is who it is they would have voted for. By the way, a third of my respondents are the general population, a third are educated elite, and a third are business decision makers. And I can break the data down by each of those particular groups. Even easier than that question, what country was least in favor of Trump? Yeah, it was Mexico, 4%, and I want to know who those 4% are, because that's really, really surprising. I could go through the rest of the results. I'm going to just skip past that, because as I say, it's all available. Which country has the highest self-evaluation of itself relative to the rest of the world? These two countries. So I'm able to look within a country and see how were you ranked by others, and how do you rate yourself, and see that. And it could be the rest of the world just hasn't caught up, or there's some self-deception that's involved in that, you know. And so that's part of what it is that's there. There's implications if we need to change policy, or we need to change the impressions that are out there to change what it is that's going on with the country. What I will tell you is, the day I release this data, and I'll make this really brief,
shove into one show, but before, I hate to bring anybody down, but I have a little pin to put in our collective balloon. The U.S. News and World Report today released our annual ranking of the best countries in the world, and the United States, you know how we always say we're number one? Turns out we're not number one. That honor goes to Switzerland. Switzerland was named the best country in the world based on several factors, including power, quality of life, economic influence, and tiny little army knife production. The U.S.
He goes on for a while. I won't bother you with that. I just, in summary, wanted to say nations have brands. Whether they like it or not, they've got a brand. Some nations, by the way, have chief marketing officers now. The United States does not, but some countries are really concerned about it. Yubo was just telling me that China just announced they're having a brand day. And China's making major investments in trying to improve their brand. It's important to do because it has an influence on their economy. And that's really essential for them to do. And there are things that countries can do that will affect what their overall brand is, and that perception, just like it is for companies. So with that, I'll say thank you. Thanks.